Good morning, Sunday before church. So it's really early for a record, but I promised you yesterday I'd do something today, and so I wanted to live up to that. Anyway, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, not even five before seven, and we do have a little bit to talk about in the weather, and it's kind of highlighted here in our watches and warnings across the country. The Pacific Northwest, inland, if you look up there, there's a lot of wind and there's a lot of cold. So we're looking at, red flag warnings here for eastern Washington, the Columbia River Gorge up into the panhandle of Idaho. But that light blue is a freeze watch. Northern Washington, northwestern Montana, into parts of Idaho, and even a freeze warning there in northeastern Oregon. So that's kind of what I think is the big story here. And those winds moving into the plains as well, most of Wyoming with a red flag warning into Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, a little bit of eastern Colorado, even into Kansas. Now it's still hot in the desert Southwest. I'm sorry, you guys, another day, excessive heat warning. And even along the California coast, central and northern coast heat advisories here and down around Miami, kind of persistent down there. A lot of river flooding across the southeast from, remnants of Helene, as those rivers are still, haven't gone back into their banks all the way in all places. And then we do have some fog there in North Carolina, way up there in northern Maine, and also northern Wisconsin. Now your weather spotlight, spotlight, spotlight. Well, I thought I would go to Missoula and pick up something, talking about how cold it is and all that. It's like, no, the wind is the big story. So gusty winds this evening. The probability of having a gust over 40 miles an hour is 60 to 70% in Lemhi County and areas along the divide. 40 to 50% western Montana and 20 to 30% in north central Idaho. Choppy conditions on the lakes and also localized tree damage. So that's what's going on up there in northwestern Montana. Here's what's going on around the country. We've got the clouds in here for you. I am trying some new maps. I saw this video yesterday. It kind of blew me away. It's like, how to succeed on YouTube, and everybody watches those, I think. I know I have for years. And they're talking about the latest trend is unedited, longer videos. Well, with the weather, when I was a weather guy, it was never edited. You just prepare your maps, and then when the maps come up, you talk to the maps. It was kind of the fun of it, the beauty of it. And so, I'm able to do that here. I just prepare my maps and then I talk to the maps. And part of what they were talking about is the trend of these longer videos. People are watching on TV. More and more people are watching on TV. Here I was worried that the temperatures were too small to read on your phone. And chances are a lot of you are watching on TV. So I'm going to try and dress up a little better too. I don't know about that. Anyway, where was I? So here's what's going on across the country. This is the latest infrared. And so the brighter the colors, the higher the cloud tops. So the most likely that there's rain or even thunderstorms. So say right here, watch that blow up there over West Virginia. So, kind of here's our biggest activity here, the Carolinas, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia. You can clearly make out where our low is here in Western Tennessee. And this shield of most likely rain under a lot of this, not affecting the places that were hit so hard in western North Carolina, for example, just to the north of that, thankfully, as they can dry out a little bit, although there will be some rain here. But this is kind of our only player in town is this low. Now, there's a low up here north of Maine. What is that? I need to brush up on my eastern Canada provinces. Is that Nova Scotia? Anyway, there's a low here, not doing a whole lot. And then we see activity up in British Columbia moving into Alberta and just a little bit of that trailing into Washington State. And here's a little disturbance moving through Colorado. Kind of interesting. Anyway, all right, surface for today looks like this. We have our area of critical fire danger into South Dakota, a little bit of Nebraska and North Dakota. So again, that wind And it's going to be hot in the central northern plains mainly. We'll show you that here in a second too. And the combination high fire danger. Here's our low with that rain shield around it. The heaviest stuff where we're seeing those cloud tops blow up, West Virginia, Virginia, and that is the forecast here. And then up in the northwest, maybe even a little bit of snow in the Cascades of Washington. So here are your temperatures above average, below average, depending on where you are, the anomalies. And we're remaining below average, 10 to 15 degrees for Tennessee, and to Kentucky is the bullseye, but a large area here, slightly below average at least in the blue. And also the Pacific Northwest, just barely below average, but below average. And then you get into the northern plains, 30 degrees above average in North Dakota, parts of South Dakota. And how hot does that translate into real temperatures? 90, 100, 93, 90 in Hastings, Nebraska. I mean, just really hot, the northern plains. And again, with the winds picking up, high fire danger for parts of South Dakota. So be careful, if you're out there playing with matches. In the desert Southwest, let's see, it's 10 degrees above average for Tucson. That translates to 98. And 13 degrees above average for Phoenix translates to 107. So very hot here. Kind of cool in the northwest, with our systems moving through, at least north of there, keeping it cool. And then cool around our rain in Kentucky, Tennessee, up into, say, Pennsylvania. A lot of 60s in here, surrounded by 70s. And then when you get into Texas, 80s and 90s. And same for Florida. Lows for tomorrow morning. Here's our freeze watches and warnings and frosts and all that stuff up there in Montana, Idaho, Washington as well. Lots of 30s on this map up there. And then 40s in the lower elevations, even 40 in Eugene. So kind of chilly. I don't know. Isolated areas with frost? Maybe, probably not. Then you get further south in the southwest, the lows starting in the 80s. Yikes. Still hot for parts of the plains, but a cold front's coming. And so the warmest lows shifting further to the east in the northern plains, if that makes sense. A lot of 60s on this map, and then getting into the 70s, South Texas to start the day, and also the mid-Atlantic. Here's your rain for the next 24 hours. The 48-hour map wasn't working. So that guy's on strike, or he's called in sick. I don't know. Anyway, you would think the guy who draws the 24 would draw the 48, but here's the 24-hour rainfall amounts expected, mainly around the Ohio Valley. So we're talking Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, into Virginia, and we're talking approaching an inch in some areas here. So not a big issue with the rain, thankfully. Surface for tomorrow, here comes our cold front. In the northern plains, that'll be moving through the Midwest. I mean, we're here in western Iowa, we're suffering through mid-80s. It's not terrible, but I'm waiting for things to cool off, and that would be Tuesday. So that'll be on the next surface map. So that cold front's going to be cooling us off. Now ahead of it, fire danger still for Nebraska, and our persistent low over there in the Tennessee, Ohio valleys, Midwest, into the southeast and to the mid-Atlantic, and the heaviest rainfall now into Virginia, parts of West Virginia, Maryland, near Washington, D.C. Temperature anomalies for tomorrow, you see that cooler air moving into the northern plains. Now, we're going 30 degrees above average to like 3 degrees below average, so just knocking things back down to where they should be this time of year, but we'll take it. However, here in western Iowa, that won't be tomorrow. It'll still be well above average ahead of the front. Still a little bit above average desert Southwest, still a little bit below average for the, again, where that low is centered over Kentucky, Tennessee, the Virginias. And so that's where our slightly below average temperatures are. Highs for tomorrow, still 103 for Phoenix, still mid-90s, Central California, but much cooler in North Dakota, 60 instead of 100. That's a 40-degree swing. Quick math in the morning. And so it looked very much pleasant with that front coming, but ahead of the front, still hot. We got plenty of 80s in Iowa and even some 90s in Nebraska down into Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. And then we get back towards that low and things start to cool off again, 70s and even 60s here. Surface on Tuesday, yes, there's our front all the way through Illinois, Missouri, Oklahoma. Not all the way through, but moving through all the way through Iowa. So our highs on Tuesday are supposed to be 60 something instead of 80 something like today. So much better. Washington with some rain up there, and we continue with showers from our remnants of Helene and just that moisture hanging out. Ohio River Valley up into the northeast now, and also along the central coast. And then tomorrow's highs, cooler for Virginia and Pennsylvania and Maryland and Delaware, and a little bit warmer for the West Coast, especially California, and the plains pretty close, pretty much average now in Iowa. So we go from much above average to 2 degrees above average, say for Omaha. And so much better, a little bit of relief here. All right, let me switch my map and get over to the GFS. I have good news. I should have mentioned this at the top. The GFS does not have a hurricane coming. So remember yesterday we were talking about the GFS had a little bit of a hurricane coming in towards like New Orleans. No, the last few runs it's not there. And so we'll keep watching it. But what you want to watch for is model consistency, and it's not consistent. If anything, it's now consistent not having a hurricane. So that is really good news. All right, we're starting out current pretty much. And here's our low. And then we have a little bit of snow up here in British Columbia, Alberta, Canada. And as we go through time, our low continues with the rain where we've been talking about. This gets us through already tomorrow morning. And we see these tight isobars. So here's all of our wind in the northern plains. You see the 540 line? That is your demarcation between rain and snow, and it's dipping into the United States. So even though it's dry here, an indication of some colder air. And as we go through time, gets us through Monday night, midnight, Tuesday, and you can see that cold air just skirting along the Canadian border, and but still cooling off further south as that front gets pushed mostly east. It doesn't have much of a southward push, but a little bit. This gets us into Tuesday morning with the rain here for, say, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware. Here's our front. You can make it out pretty easily with this rain. And see our 540 line right along Lake Superior. The Pacific Northwest stuff staying north into Canada. Maybe just a little bit leaking across the border. And then, otherwise it's like pretty quiet. Now, this is what was a hurricane on the run yesterday morning. And we look at it this morning, and yeah, there's some moisture and it's a little bit organized. But, maybe a tropical storm. I'm not even sure it'll be that strong. Just some tropical moisture. Looks like some heavy rain. Maybe getting as far west as Houston into Louisiana. And this is Thursday night at midnight right here. And so as we go, see some moisture lifting into the northeast with some showers and thunderstorms and heavy rain. This gets us into Saturday. Look at that. A little snowstorm moving through Canada. Might push some cold air further south. And this gets us into Saturday morning now with the rain in the southeast and that low just kind of hanging out. But it's just tropical moisture. It is not, I repeat, not a hurricane. So, we'll keep an eye on it. Again, as we go through these computer models, the further out in time we get, the less certain we are. You know the old joke about weatherman, well, I wish I could be wrong half the time and still get paid. It's funny because it's true, I guess. 6 to 10 day temperatures. We're looking at warm temperatures for the whole country. This is the 4th, 10-4, good buddy, through the 8th. And yeah, warm temperatures and the best chance for above average precipitation down in the southeast with our tropical low. Again, not a hurricane, but maybe some tropical moisture. Nonetheless, then that moisture all the way along the East Coast. So eastern third, maybe above average precipitation possible. Western two thirds below average possible. All right, there you go. That's my early morning before church. Probably woke the neighbors. Forecast into next weekend. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I appreciate it. We will do this again tomorrow morning right here on the Weather Mic.